Hi. So for my visual synthesis, I wanted to make a video explaining my collage that I chose to do, and like the different parts of it. So first of all, for my collage, I tried to consider the underlying theme that I thought about through much of our class, which was, of course, the drive to height, but the lengths at which people will go to achieve what they think, like what their personal drive to height may be. So in this collage, I created like a lower earthly half and then a heavenly or celestial half. So like the bottom is representing the earth and like our own like entrenched in reality world, and then the second half, the top half, is this idealized space where we are reaching the height that we're driven towards, or achieving the things we want, etc. And I think, the idea of how to frame this came from our first readings, where the drive to height was really intertwined, of course, with religion. And so the idea of making taller buildings, even for like ancient civilizations, came from being closer to like their heaven or their god. So I chose to lay it out like that, and then within both halves there are other details I think I tied in to the course. So in the collage, the earthly inhabitants are attempting to grasp at the angel. I use the angel to represent the things people may be driven towards. So is that truth, creating a legacy, power, influence, or other aspects of and themes in that nature that people may seek through their own drive to height. And then, on that earthly side, I added images of all the different ways people try to achieve the drive to height. So, and they try to grasp at this like elusive angel of truth or power, influence, ambition, etc. So I have the buildings. Of course, much of this class is focused on architecture. So this skyline forming that gets kind of higher and taller and closer to the angel. And then I have the large reaching hand, which is kind of the focal point. Because in my mind, I chose a hand because I think it is very human to drive to height. So I wanted something, this human hand kind of emerging out of the ground, and underneath all the smoke and smog from the hand, you can see the hands kind of emerging from these flowers, which I thought... Okay, I already hit the time limit. Oops, I'm new to this, so... I was just saying how the flowers that the hand is emerging from were kind of a nod to Spengler and Sedlmayr and their ideas of, starting from the earth, and the importance of returning to our earthly roots, and then that connection also to Heidegger and Metropolis, because I think both of those had ideas intertwined with Spengler and Sedlmayr. Then I had like this kind of tower of people, which I think we've talked about a lot, the exploitation of some people to build yourself up. You have to push others down to get your own power, those kind of ideas that we've discussed frequently throughout the course. And then the rocket, which is a personal nod to Wernher von Braun, who I think is a particularly interesting and megalomaniac character that we have discussed this term. And then the radio tower, which is more representative than anything, I used as kind of a nod to the technology and social media space that allows us to really perpetuate our ideas. And this idea, the term influencer comes from influence, and influence is power, and that's kind of this tradable idea now, and something we might trade to get closer to this angel of truth and power. And yeah, so then a couple of the other details where I added were to expose my own critique of this, right? So obviously the earthly side has all these deep colors, smoke, it's kind of more boring to look at. The celestial side is of course gorgeous, and it just encapsulates my own idea that I think the real crux of this drive to height issue, and kind of the modern day tragedy of it, is we will ruin ourselves and our own world and our relationships in order to get closer to that drive to height. And I think that ties into something that all of the authors have said, but especially even Freud, this idea of relationships and how we may ruin them in order to achieve our drive to height. And similarly, in all of the texts, this idea that we will sacrifice many things, our humanity, in order to do something very human, which is to grasp at the next big thing, the next success. And yeah, as I said, this was inspired kind of holistically by the class as a whole, but I did take the idea of this angel from, I think it was Nietzsche, and then some discussion of monuments, Wernher von Braun, Spengler, Sedlmayr, and Benjamin, and then Heidegger, of course, in the small details.